Thanks for being here. Please make sure to say hi, ask questions, be involved in this conversation. That's why we go live, and especially do that today because I managed to mess up all of my wire. Well, it wasn't completely me. My dog messed up all my wires, and we almost didn't end up here. So please make sure to check in and just tell us it's working. We see you. That would be very reassuring. Di and I were both panicked, both thinking it was our fault that she couldn't get in, and it was my fault. Well, technically it was Groot's fault, but he can't defend himself, so it was my fault. I am here today with our first, well, with an asterisk, our first. One time we had a guest that had a technical difficulty, so we weren't able to get everything out of that one conversation. But this is our first real purposeful repeat guest, and I am so happy and honored that that could be Di Ciruolo. Di is here because, and thank you, Philip. Thanks for letting us know it's working. So Di is here because we interviewed Di a long time ago. I think maybe 30 episodes ago, I think. This is our 41st episode. And we interviewed Di about her first book, Ally Up. And we talked all about DEIB, and it was an amazing conversation. And then I saw that Di has been posting the most, there's certain people's LinkedIn feed that you want to check in every day. Di is that to me because of all that she talks about around ADHD. As many of you know, I'm not shy about admitting that I am an adult with ADHD, and Di is as well. We share a common love for the Hydrate water bottle. That's a great tool for people with ADHD to remember to drink their water. But before I get too far gone, I got to introduce the woman to those of you who don't know Di. But Di has just written her second book. And so, which is incredibly powerful, and we're going to get into. But let me tell you what Di wants you to tell me to tell you about her. Di Ciruolo is an author, speaker, and justice advocate. Her first book, Ally Up, discussed her experiences supporting tech people departments through growing their equity awareness, building programs both in the U.S. and abroad. Di's second book, Indomitable, I got the book right here, is a more personal book which details her experiences as a ward of the state in the Massachusetts foster care system. Her life growing up on the outside as a foster kid with neurodiversity has given her a unique understanding of humanness that informs her practice and her life. Di's passion is freeing other humans from the guilt and self-harm that can come from trauma and loss. And she has a love-hate relationship with public speaking. Really, a hate relationship too. Di loves her maid family, Fleetwood Mac, trotty dogs, and standing in the ocean in her purple wellies year-round. I'm not sure if I'm still reading English. What is a welly and what is a trotty dog? Di tries every day to embody the Dolly Parton quote, "Find out who you are and do it on purpose." Di's a mother of two neuro-spicy kids, I love that, and is married to her partner Jay, and they enjoy a coastal grandmother lifestyle. Wow, I feel like I need a translator for your bio.
People ask for a bio and you get to the place where you're just like, you know what? I'm going to write what I really care about here.
I love it. Okay. So, we go into our 6 and 60 rapid fire questions before we do anything else, but these don't count as your 6 and 60, but trotty dog. What is a trotty dog?
It's a dog that trots. You know what I mean? They trot, they got the little ears.
All dogs don't do that?
I
guess my dog does not. My dog is big.
Especially trotty. Some dogs are especially trotty. Those are my favorite.
Cool. All right. If you own a trotty dog and you have a picture handy, you should put it in the chat wherever you are. And wellies, purple wellies.
So, wellies is actually how British folks say it. It just means like knee-high boots. Like, do you know the rubber ones that you can go in the ocean with, and you
Oh
go up to
yeah.
your knees with water? Wellies,
Wait,
right?
wading, like, don't you wear those types of
Waders,
boots
yeah,
when you're
waders.
wading in, like,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
you don't go in the ocean with them, do you?
Of
Unless it's a really
course I
dirty
do.
ocean.
Oh my gosh, yes, I do. So just like it helps me year round because
Wow.
I live near the ocean. You know,
Cool.
I love it.
Okay. So I love all of that. Thank you for translating some of those things for
Thank
me.
you.
All
Thanks
right.
for asking.
But I really want to get into this. Oh, cool. Philip just shared a link. Wellington boot. I'm gonna definitely check that out. Uh, I noticed it says Wellington boot, not Wellies, but
True.
I
True.
guess you're just tight with Wellington like that. So, before we get into this, because I've got a lot on my mind after reading your book,
Mm,
and I've been sharing with you in pieces as I was getting through the book. But before we get into that, it's time for 6 and 60. And I was
okay.
reviewing our last conversation, and you got through 1.5 questions in 60 seconds. So this is your moment for redemption, Di. Are you ready?
Uh, yes, I'm
All
on a
right.
slight delay, so if this doesn't count
All right, then
here.
we'll give you 65 seconds.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Okay, hit me. Hit me.
All right.
Yes.
I will tee up the first question before I hit the button.
Go.
When you are feeling overwhelmed or burned out, what do you do to reset or recharge?
I watched The Golden Girls.
Nice. You're an avid reader. Name one book
Yes.
that had the greatest impact on your life or career.
Ooh, greatest impact on my life or career. Oh God. Okay. I'm going to say maybe Freakonomics.
Ooh,
Because honestly, I didn't realize how many I love systems and like it's perfect for my brain. So I love that kind of thing.
awesome. What is your favorite dinosaur?
Ooh, Velociraptor.
Nice. Best piece of advice or wisdom you've ever received?
Um, Not to let other people's experiences dictate your experience because only they think their experience is universal.
No, wow. Okay. And I think we're going to get into that this time. Number 5, from one neurodiverse person to another.
Yeah.
You just finished writing your second book. What the hell?
Yeah.
That's the question. How'd you do
Oh,
that?
that's a question. Oh,
Like,
how did I do
give us
that?
give us a tool, something that helped
Ooh,
you do that.
something that helped me do that. My calendar app, having a great partner, knowing that knowing that I was always destined to do this. So this was always something that I knew I was going to have to do, and I knew I wouldn't be able to go any farther in my life if I couldn't. So that probably pushed me harder than anything. And you know how like if somebody tells us we can't do something, or like the rage can drive us. I would say like the rage was definitely an incredible tool to getting this done and getting it all down. So,
Yeah. That makes sense, especially in the context of this book, because it's
of
so
course, of
personal.
course, it is. Yes, it
And
is.
final question, and we'll give it to you anyway because you made it
I
really
appreciate
far.
that. I'm getting
Uh,
so far.
Final question, in 5 words or less, what's the meaning of life?
Oh God, 5 words. I would say helping other people helps you.
Hmm, that's great.
Healing yourself helps other people helps you. Oh my God, what's happening with my? Sorry,
We
I
still
don't think
see
of my
you.
Wi-Fi. Oh, okay, great.
Oh. So, okay. So you came out with the book Indomitable. It's not officially out yet, but people can get their advanced copy directly from your website, right?
Right. Yep. It's in pre-launch phase.
Yeah. And it is um shocking, it is disturbing, and I hope I'm not insulting you by
Nope.
describing the book, which is your life, as disturbing. Um uh as somebody who has always known that I have privilege, but after reading that book, I was like, what? Like, I did not know that world existed.
Yeah.
Um, to read something like that was extremely powerful, and also left me really wanting to know what can I do, right? And so I want to get into all of that today if we have time. But
Oops.
I also, but first, I would love for you to give us sort of the background. If for people that haven't read the book, your origin story. Which, by the way, I use the term origin story in your book. You cite somebody else for using it, and maybe you went on their podcast first. But you certainly acted like I was the first one who asked you what I asked you.
You know what? Now that you say that, I like it's so funny that you say that.
But
I literally, when I rewatched it, I was like, "Oh my god, he did it too."
So,
So, yeah,
you speak a
everybody,
lot in the
I
book
love
about
it in my book.
narcissism. So that's my narcissistic comment that I read your book about trauma and was traumatized that you didn't mention me and
You're
as you.
totally right.
But anyway, okay, give me your origin story.
So, the short version of this, because I don't want to take up a ton of time, is that I grew up in the Massachusetts foster care system. I was removed from my own family when I was 3, and I sort of bounced around in the system over the course of years. I was placed with one foster family over maybe like 10, I don't know, probably 10 to 15 years or so. And I age out of the foster care system and I become homeless. But this story, this book, sort of details all of those experiences. And when you go through stuff like this, you think that the idea is to hide it and keep it to yourself. And that's true for everybody, whether their family is alcoholics, whether their family is whatever, you're just trying to get through it and be normal, right? So, or at least that's been my experience with everybody who's
Hmm.
experienced trauma, is that you're trying to hide all of that. And I thought that was the deal. I thought that was the goal. I thought it was to fit yourself into a box that was acceptable for others, right? That was desirable for others, that was admirable to others. But as I get older, I have kids. And I would say that that really changed the game for me, not just because it changes your life in such a huge way, but because when I met my daughter, who looks so much like I did as a kid, I just felt this rage building in me that, like, oh my God, how dare you? Like, oh my God, how dare they? How dare these people do these things to me and blame me for it? How dare I continue to carry that in that way and continue to assign blame to myself and sort of self-harm around these things? I would never want this for her. I would never want this, for my children. And it pushed me to do something that I've been afraid to do for all of my life, which is account for these stories and sort of spend time sitting in those memories, sitting in that trauma, sitting in those sorts of feelings and feeling those feelings, because we avoid feelings as human beings. We avoid those traumatic feelings. So I basically took like 9 months of my life sitting here retelling these stories and just like writing and writing, and it became so important to me that other people understand that that my way of looking at the world just didn't fall into anybody else's experience that I knew. And I guess this was sort of my, I don't know, my call out to the world, like this was me speaking for the child I was, I think. Do you know what I mean? It was me
Yeah,
speaking for her and saying this wasn't okay, and now I'm going to fight for her even if it hurts me. So
right. It's
here we are doing
incredibly
that.
powerful.
Thank you.
That process must have
Yeah.
been extremely painful. On the other side of that, how did it impact you going through that process?
Oh my God. So I would say, like, I have this like pain in my chest that has been sitting there as like just a huge weight for just such a long time. And it's kind of always been there. But like as I sat down to do this, it just got heavier and heavier, and the anxiety was wrapping around it. So it wasn't just like the feelings, it was the anxiety about the feelings. And then it was and it just, I would say it probably aged me. You know what I mean? I would
Hmm.
say that that it drained me in a lot of ways. And I'm hoping to sort of get back to center. I'm not there yet, to be honest with you.
Right.
But I am, it definitely pushed me out of my comfort zone by a lot, and probably did a lot to harm my body just in the ways that I was dealing with the anxiety. I mean, I was eating way too many tacos. I'm probably about 15 pounds overweight right now. Like, it's just like all the real ways that human beings deal with their feelings. Those were the things that I was doing. Um, so
That's
it's, yeah,
That's incredible. And you so many times in the book you talk about people not seeing you or not knowing how to interact with you, or you said at some point you talked about your friend when it dawned on you that they had no idea that you had gone through these experiences. Um, and so many of the people viewing today have not been through anything close to that level of trauma. But
right.
so many of them do work with people, know people, manage people who have been through
Of course.
trauma.
Of
And
course.
so, as I'm reading this book, and as a friend of yours, and knowing
Mhm.
we're going to interact, I don't know how, you know, um, how does somebody, it's like when somebody's trauma is revealed, you feel like whatever you say is not going to be the right thing to say, and so sometimes you avoid saying anything, and other times you say the wrong thing. I know when the book arrived in the mail, I sent you a selfie with me holding up the book with my thumbs up, and then I sent you an apology after I read the
Oh my
first few chapters.
No, I always feel bad about that too, because like people will be like, "I'm so excited to read. I'm so pumped for you. Congratulations." And I'm always like not sure how to be like, "Slow down. It's not
Right,
going to be,
right,
it's not going to be
right.
that kind of book. It's not going to be that excited book." But I think what I'm noticing is that people who sort of deal with their feelings, and sort of the neurodiverse especially,
Mm,
come back to me and tell me what they thought. Whereas people who don't sort of have those experiences kind of ghost, like they don't
yeah,
know how to talk to me about it and have
right,
just decided not to. And that's totally fine. I mean, I get it. Like, I don't know what I would do, but like, I understand that people don't have those experiences at that level and maybe don't know how to relate. But the thing that is most common in humanity, in my opinion, is that we've all been through stuff. We've all been through trauma. We all have our own kinds of trauma. And while maybe somebody didn't go through the things that I have gone through, everybody's gone through their own thing. So everybody can relate to those feelings. So because those things are the most common, the way we behave as humans are incredibly specific. And
right,
once you've kind of been through those things, or you can see those things, it looks very specific to you. So you can sort of predict how certain people are going to react in certain circumstances. And I'm going so far as to sort of guess to their upbringing when I see certain behaviors in the wild, right?
mm,
So that's been how that works for me. And I'm just, so, I mean, I spent probably the last 4 months or so annoyed about all the things that it was touching. So you talk about work, you talk about how it looks in a workplace.
right.
There's that, right? There's how it, and we should probably get into that first because this is LinkedIn. But like, there's how that plays, and then there's how it plays in your personal life. How does
Right.
it play in your relationships? How does it play in your, it touches everything. I call it the trauma tentacles because it literally touches everything you do in your life if you don't deal with it. And that's why it's so important. It was so important to me to take this big of a stand and this loud of a stand about what I'd been through, because I wasn't going to heal as long as I was hiding it.
Right. And you bring up a lot of really great points. This is the problem with two people with ADHD talking in this fashion, because we're like, there's too much to talk about here. But one of the things that you were talking about, being able to pick up on people's
Of
story
course.
by
Yeah,
by seeing their behavior. And
of
there
course.
is that element, the people who
Of
don't
course.
talk about these things. Today
Right.
is Yom HaShoah, the Holocaust Remembrance Day. And
Right.
I sent you a message earlier that growing
Mhm.
up surrounded by Holocaust survivors, it was almost like the normal thing to do was to not talk about it, not
Right.
open up. And
Right.
it was extremely brave for those who did, not taking away from anything away from those who didn't, but it
Right.
was so important to talk about it for those who could bring themselves to do that. But you have people who can bring themselves to do that and people who can't or don't
Yeah.
want to, and they don't owe you anything to bring that
No,
out and be open about it.
that's absolutely right.
But what about the typical leader who doesn't know how to approach these things? So the person who doesn't talk about it, right?
Hmm.
Like, how do I make sure that I am leading in a way that's supportive and inclusive and gives a sense of belonging to people who have gone through trauma or maybe going through trauma right now? How can I be sensitive to those things while also respecting boundaries and also respecting the fact that I have no idea who's been through this stuff and who hasn't?
Absolutely. Well, you just said it yourself, boundaries. Boundaries are crucially important because you don't know what people have been through and you don't know what people are going through. But I can tell you some of the things that you're looking for as a manager. Um, you know, we exhibit sort of a need for validation that sort of goes over your average person. And it's not because we are, needy. It's because we don't understand how to read those situations in a professional setting because we aren't like you in that same way. We don't have that same upbringing. So we don't have those same basic touchstones to go back to and say, oh, this behavior means this, or this behavior, how they're speaking about this means that. So what we're doing is, people with trauma like myself, we are thinking to ourselves, what is the worst possible way that I can interpret this that will cause me the most harm? Because your brain is constantly trying to seek out, find the danger, find the danger, find the danger. And that goes especially double in places like work because so much of who we are is tied into our careers. So much of who we are and our survival is sort of wrapped up in whether or not we make money. So it's just whether or not we have health insurance in a pandemic, all of those sorts of things. So if you have, and this is why it's so important that we people who have gone through these sorts of traumatic pasts understand that about ourselves, because what we typically find, at least in my background, is sort of having managers that are used to using that against us, right? Like we stay in these types of toxic workplaces because maybe we aren't specifically telling ourselves that's all we deserve, but we're definitely feeling that way because, as I say in my book, you will seek out those relationships that make you feel the most comfortable, not the ones that are good for you, the ones that make you feel comfortable. And if you're used to these sort of toxic relationships, those are the things that you're going to find yourself in constantly because other people would leave, right? So if you have a situation that you're in, you find you're not advocating for yourself, your boss is constantly texting you after hours, you are constantly being put in these situations where he's taking credit, they taking credit for your work, lying to you, gaslighting you, and then coming back to your face and saying things like, oh well, you're such a good worker, you're such a good this, you're such a good that. You're in a toxic situation, babe. It's exactly the same stuff as always. You know what I mean? And that's
Right.
so how you look at it as a manager is boundaries, support, but like not to the place where you're getting overly involved or any of that sort of thing. Just provide the support that you would want to see, especially for these types of neurodiversity communities, any of that. But for me, I've done this so many times in so many iterations, right? Bad bosses, bad relationships, bad, like
Right.
I've done this so many different ways.
Right.
So, I mean, hopefully I am at the top level where I'm not going to keep doing this again. But, you'll
Is there
see.
is there also danger on the other end? Because doing a little bit of research around the dark side of meaningful work, how
Mhm.
people can use meaningful work in order to manipulate people and low pay, long hours, etc.
Of
Because
course.
it's
Those are
for the
your
children,
NPOs.
it's for the
Yep.
animals, it's for.
Oh, yeah.
So when
Oh,
you
yeah.
talked about seeking validation, if I'm giving that to you, then I'm not going to
Mhm.
see myself as toxic, and I might not
Absolutely.
see it as toxic that you're staying up all night working
Right.
on this project because you love what you do. You love me. You love the work. Is that
Right.
also a
Yeah,
danger?
yeah, no, definitely. We see that happening. I mean, especially if you work in DEI and you are in NPOs. I've had this conversation many times with people
Yeah.
that those types of works, those types of jobs, those types of positions can really lean in on the fact that, oh, this is the work that does so much to give back to the community and this, that, and the other thing. And then you'll find out that they are spending so little money on you and so much money on themselves, or
Right.
they are taking bonuses while telling you you should be grateful. It's
Mhm.
exactly the same, I don't want to cuss, but it's exactly the same BS it always is, right? Like it's always that same, but yes, that sort of the not values, but these sort of NPOs and these charity organizations that are providing that sort of thing definitely lean in on that, especially for the younger generations now. We're seeing that with Gen Z and all of that. They're looking to, be paid more, and we're constantly like, oh well, they just want what they want, and they're this and they're that, and it's like, no, they're a little bit more. They've had a little bit more experience with this sort of thing, and they go to therapy. So
Yeah. So
that's why.
it's a great message. Like when if you see people that are leaning in a little too much, being a little too attached to work, the natural inclination for somebody in a leadership position who needs people who are going to pick up the slack and needs people who are going to work their butt
Oh
off
yeah. Oh yeah.
is to think this is the high
Yeah.
potential, this is the person, but really you should help them put the brakes on a little bit
Of
with
course,
boundaries
because
again.
on the one hand, a lot of times people will come to me and they'll say, especially with staffing needs, oh, we need to hire a rock star. And what rock star means in that context is we need somebody who's going to work twice as hard,
Right.
right? So, like, we need you to find someone that's going to do the work of two people, right? So, a lot of times I'll look at those roles and people will say, oh, I just need to hire the one person to start with and then we'll see what we need. And it's like, you are literally telling me that you are going to wait and see how much work this person can handle before you decide whether it's a two-person job or not. That's intense. So, yes, of course, they might be looking at somebody who's, working a little too hard, not having any boundaries, not any of those things. But a lot of times we see managers looking at that as a good thing and sort of trying to prioritize spending less money for more output. And of course they are. This is capitalism. Like that makes
Right.
sense. But if I mean, like sense, it's diabolical in a lot of
That
ways, but you're saying it makes
I
sense.
didn't catch that,
Right? Like we understand why.
yeah.
But I think it should be on us, the workers who have gone through these sorts of things, to not be letting that go. If somebody tells you, oh, we're like a family here, and they're more than, let's say more than 500 people, more than 1,000 people, red flag, right? Absolutely red flag. What do you mean by family? Do you mean that you're going to be calling me at all hours? Do you mean we're going to live together? Do you mean we're going to be eating all the time together? Because that sort of makes me feel like you're doing something that I should be kind of watching out for. Like,
Right. Right.
so, but I mean, as a manager, the best thing you can do is model boundaries. The best thing you can do is not be trying to text people on the weekend if it's not an emergency. The best thing you can do is be modeling the behavior that you want to see. And you can be letting people go on vacations by you modeling going on vacations. Because as I have said 1,000 times, sometimes a no vacation policy turns into a no vacations policy.
Right.
So if you're the type of person that's doing that stuff yourself, you're the manager that's already not going on vacation, already answering emails, already texting people, you are setting that example that they can't have boundaries either. So realistically, the best thing you can do is deal with your own BS. You know what I mean? The best
Right.
thing you
Right.
can do is deal with your own trauma,
Yeah.
and then model that for others.
It's definitely interesting that we're like a family here. It sort of goes hand in hand with we value diversity, right? I mean, it's met with rolled eyes nowadays.
Hmm.
Not people don't buy it anymore. And
Right. Of course you don't.
but
Yeah.
when we talk about these boundaries and being like family, in the book you talk about this boss that almost rescued you,
Of course.
by inviting you to Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
By Did he get you a car, or am I making that up? Something
No, no, he definitely he fronted me the money for a car.
fronted you the
He
money for a car,
absolutely.
right?
Yep.
So this person, like, it seems like is that um, uh, like respecting boundaries, or is that crossing some boundaries? Why is it okay there but not? And this goes hand in
So,
hand with what you were saying. This is LinkedIn, so we have to talk about
yes,
business. But
of
one of
course.
the group of hashtags that I use all the time is meaningful work,
Yeah.
meaningful life. They
Yeah.
are interconnected. So where do those boundaries need to exist?
So specifically, I was 20 years old. He runs a business that was a family business at the time. He ran it with his son. Um, Very Christian family, very Southern Christian family specifically. And the reason I mention the Christian part is because you see a lot of times with Christian folks that they will uplift people that are having a hard time. And I'm not saying nobody else does, but I'm saying that that's like very specifically a Southern Christian thing that they're constantly doing and talking about great, great folks. Um, so, yes, on the one hand, that probably was definitely crossing boundaries in, but I didn't have any boundaries, right? So like
Right.
I didn't have any awareness. And honestly, he treated each person as their his own relationship with
Yeah.
them, right? So there were definitely people that were older and that had been around more and that had boundaries and families and all of those things. But for me, he treated me the way I needed to be treated at the time, which definitely did show me that I had value that I didn't think I had before. So, yeah, I would say that me specifically, I am a hypocrite because I definitely appreciated that that he did that for me. But nowadays, I think a lot of the business circumstances that we live in are very different than what they were, 15, 20 years ago when this guy was helping out a foster kid that was homeless, like I think this was a but yeah, no, he definitely helped change my life. He helped show me that I had value. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think we're all hypocrites because I don't think you're being hypocritical. I think there's nuance to these things.
Oh, of course.
But the
Of
question
course.
is, are you able to navigate within the nuance? Some people are. Like you said, you get a natural read on people, etc.
Of course.
If you don't have full confidence that you're able to navigate the nuance, then you
Mhm.
should be taking the more careful approach.
Of course, of course. And we all think that we're good people readers, right? We all
Right.
think that we're great in those situations. But I know what I'm truly good and bad at because I've actually examined those things. And as I say in the book, like the unexamined life is not best for humaning
Mhm.
because in this day and age, how we think about businesses has grown away from those sort of mom and pops, away from the sort of um, I want to say small businesses because there are still like 90% of the world is small businesses. But like, I think we should set standards based on kind of what we live with now as opposed to what existed. And I'm old now, I'm 40. So, like,
Oh,
what
same
existed,
here.
but sorry if anybody's over 40. I'm just saying this is the oldest I've ever been. This is way older than I thought I'd get. So, but yeah, I mean, Bob was an incredible person and he was in his 60s at the time and he was really seeking to let me know that he had my back
Mhm.
in a way that I just couldn't um, I wouldn't have found other ways. And he sort of stepped up in that way and added a lot of good things to my life. But for business purposes now, I think that when people say, "Oh, we're like a family here," I worry about that. Like I sort of give that the eyebrow, and I want to know what they mean by that, and I want to know why
Right.
the last person left. I want to know if you're growing or if you're rehiring because like that can tell you a lot. I mean, the best people, honestly, who get away with this sort of crap are the people who are practiced at that kind of thing. And it's,
Right.
you see it in many parts of their life, not just who they are in business, but who they are in their own lives. So I guess it depends.
Yeah, it's kind of like in DEI lingo, show me the receipts, right?
Yes.
Like
Oh,
you're
cool.
saying
Yeah.
your family, what does that mean? Where's the evidence?
Yeah.
Right.
And I would say another thing that's changed in the last time since you and I spoke face to face like this, I would say that when I first was doing DEI in tech and biotech, I wrote my first book because I very much believed the idea that everybody just didn't know what they needed to know, right? Like I very much believed oh my gosh, I'll write this book at level 0 and everybody else who is much higher on the rungs of like doing this work will be able to do bigger things because everybody else down here in these baby level zeros will be getting educated in an easy way.
Mhm.
And now I'm realizing that people don't like to change, right? Like
Uh,
now that I'm kind of a grown up now, when I was a baby in the in the early days of DEI, I was like, oh, of course, everybody just doesn't know, and that's that. I'll go ahead and help educate people. Like I'll be over here on this part of the battle line, right? And then the older I got and the bigger the rooms got, the more I realized that sometimes people don't like to change and people don't like to be told to eat their vegetables and people don't like to be told that they are potentially benefiting from something that somebody else didn't go through. So I have to close that gap a lot because people will look at my face and they'll say, oh, well, I can say whatever I want to in front of you because you're going to understand we have that shared experience. And
mhm.
then what they don't know is that obviously I don't have that shared experience. I don't, if you read my book, I point out all the different places where I just wasn't raised by anyone. And I
Right.
just didn't know these things, right? So it can be, I would say that nowadays, I think we are seeing a much different fight and sort of a much different pushback um, in the way that Carol Anderson talks about in her book, White Rage. She says that every time we have a movement forward in progress, we see an equal and opposite
Mhm.
pushback from those who like the status quo the way it is.
Yeah.
So I think that we're seeing that now in a very big way, and it's very well organized, and it's very a lot of things. I don't want to get too off topic here, but it's hard to go through as me. I
It's
mean, as everyone, but like if you have that trauma, it's hard to see that stuff right in your face again.
it's fascinating to me that knowing what I know about your life story from the book, that you entered your professional career with the same wide eyes that I did, believing in everybody and the good in everybody. And it
Of
seems
course.
like you just learned that lesson, but that
Oh my god.
lesson you again and again and again people failed
A
you.
thousand times. A thousand times to stop believing what people say about themselves and start believing by their actions, right? A thousand times. From the book to now, I still have to be kicked in the face every time before I know. I always want to believe the best in people, right? I always want to believe that if people are coming and seeking my help, that that's a good enough place to start. But sometimes the reasons why they say things and the reasons why they do things aren't with the best intentions, and that like just it I have ADHD. I can't do that. I No one has ever believed a single lie I have ever told a day in my life. Like it's one of the things that I struggle with, that we all struggle with, in fact, which is why we surround ourselves with other people with autism and ADHD. Like that's um, I struggle with that to this day. Like
So
I said, I'm 40.
what do you feel is healthier or the better way to live, like believing in people or having and potentially being let down, or having the cynicism? I know, so my wife is almost finished reading your book right now, and she really wanted me to ask you, is it really like that for everybody or for so many people, or was this just a unique experience? Every single point of your journey there was somebody there to abuse you, either sexually, physically, emotionally, all of the above. And you point to this being a fairly universal experience
Yeah,
within foster care. And
right.
just reading your story like makes the reader sort of like turn on humanity. Like these are the people who want to work with kids and work with the foster system, and it just seems it seems unreal. And so you're making us more cynical. Is it healthier to be more cynical, or healthier to have an open mind about these things in your, or give people the benefit of the doubt in your experience?
In my experience is the hard kicker there. So let me tell you how I am now. So I still, to this day, will help people who need help. I am still volunteering in all sorts of ways. I am still reaching out and helping kids. I have a Ukrainian refugee living in my home. I care about the world still, and whether or not someone takes the goodness I bring to a situation, or the wide-eyedness that I bring to a situation, or the heart that I bring to a situation and uses it against me later, that doesn't change who I am as a person, right? All I can do is control who I am. All I can do is bring my whole self to a situation and hope for the best. Now, am I more cynical once I notice sort of behavior patterns that are familiar to me? Yes. And I will pull out of those situations faster and protect myself quicker. And I think that that's truly the best thing that you can do, is sort of develop that method of protecting yourself that says, I'm going to come into this situation with my best intentions, but if you respond to me with your worst intentions, I'm going to be like, okay, well, that's a you thing. Like, that's a you problem. And that's going to shut me off for life. Like, you're never going to be able to convince me you were doing anything else. Right. Like,
Right.
so I would say it's that way, but I never want to become a cynical person that thinks the world is a bad place as a result of even my own experience with the world. So, to answer your wife's question, it's sort of twofold, because on the one hand, yes, a lot of people want to be seen as the type of person who helps children and care about children, because it benefits them in not only just the they get money out of it way, but they get sort of narcissist cookies out of it, right? Because they like being seen as that person. They like being revered in that way for doing things that potentially other people wouldn't do. And I have found that, especially in the foster care system, it attracts a lot of those types of folks. However, that does not mean that there are no good people in that system. It doesn't mean that there are no good people on earth. It doesn't mean, even if I were the only person that was doing things right, at the end of the day, that's still enough for me, because I did it right. I'm like, I don't need other people. Like, I don't need other people to see that or be proud of me or clap for me. Every day when my head hits the pillow, I'm like, I put my all into it. I came to this world with love, and I am going to leave with love, and that's good enough for me. It has to be. You can't change anything else.
Right, right. And I feel like we know so much from your book is another just picture into the dark side of humanity, and that sort of view is available to us everywhere. And so people enter the workplace and they're so incredibly cynical. We used to speak about that specifically from the employer's standpoint, theory X, that we just assume there were so many leaders, and I believe today maybe that number is even growing, but there's so
Mm-hmm.
many leaders who believe that people naturally are lazy, they don't care about their job, they're there to get the most pay for the least amount, etc. And we've always had a problem with that and been trying to fix that. But now employees are doing the same thing. And so when we look at people who are burned again and again, not to
Mm-hmm.
compare this to your trauma, because
Of course.
it's really, there's no comparison, but in the sense that we need to protect ourselves. And so this, some level of cynicism helps, but at the same time, the cynicism breeds cynicism, right? If I am now saying that work being a family is all BS and I'm there for the paycheck because they're just there to get the labor out of me, then I'm
Mm-hmm.
walking into it like that. And so of course my employer is going to be like that, and that's going to make me double down, etc. It seems like we're
So
in a
yes,
weird place.
yeah, no, true. It depends, because a lot of times when I notice about sometimes those managers who will come to me and they'll be like, "Oh, well, my employees just they don't care." Gen Z, especially, I hear it all the time. Gen Z is just in it for the paycheck, and I'm like, "Well, what do you want them to be in it for? Like,
Right.
like you make boxes. What do you want them to do? Like, do you want them to be like so excited to come in and make boxes? Someday this box will be, used for the best box. Like, who cares? Like, look, yes, on the one hand, we all get money from the things that we do, right? Like we all get money from our employers. But the bosses that are the most irritated about that sort of thing are the ones that want to take advantage anyway, right? Like they say that stuff and they don't even hear that that's the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, well they only want to they don't care about working extra. They don't care about and it's like of course they don't. Should they? Should they be doing extra labor for you for free? Because it sounds to me like you're looking to, exploit people a little bit and like not feel bad about it. Like you want us to clap for you. What do you want? Like,
Right.
of course, you know what I mean? It's I would just say be real about if you are a manager or you're an employer in some way, be real about what you're doing there. Are you the type of person who's going to, for example, tell everybody else that it was a hard year, lay off a bunch of people, and then take a $6 million bonus for yourself because you worked so hard? Can't think of anybody like that in the last couple of weeks. I can, right? Like, come on. Let's not pretend that like employers are just doing us all a favor. They benefit from our labor. So if that's the case, do we really need to feel like, oh, well, they do it for the right reasons? The right reasons are that they show up, they do the thing that you need them to do, you benefit for more of it, and you sell it for a profit. Like, settle down. Let's all just be real about what we're doing here, okay? Like we don't need of course you can care about the work you do. I care about the work I do. I love the work I do. I love walking into a room and seeing so many people change their mind about something, right? And come back to me with feedback and just be like, "Oh my god, I do this differently now because of you." Do I need for people to think that I don't get paid to do anything? Like, do I need people to think I'm just doing this for the love of the like I could use my energy for anything, right? Like I could use it for anything. People pay me because they want to feel like they are, inspired, like they can do more, like they can be more. And what I'm really here for is to be the person I needed when I was a kid. I need to be able to tell that little girl that's living inside of me, hey, we didn't die. We moved on. We fixed this. We found other people who were suffering like we were suffering and we let them be free of it. I don't really care whether or not like if you're going to exploit people, I'm not really here to make you feel better about it. Like come
Right.
on. A
Right.
lot of and I'm not saying that all employers are exploiting people. I'm saying that some employers, specifically the ones who exploit people, are the ones who have the most to say about that. And it's like,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah. For sure.
I don't know. I
It's a
struggle
large
with that.
number. But we also
Yeah,
have
for
to
sure.
make space for the Bobs of the world, right? I mean,
Of
because they
course.
still do exist.
Oh, of course. I saw this post on LinkedIn since we're here where somebody was being like, "Oh, well, you should never talk bad about your employer even if they're trash and they do this, that and the other thing and they let you go." And it was found out that this guy had never worked for anybody but his dad. And I'm sitting there going, like, "Come on. Can we just I get so
Yeah.
tired, like I get so
Right.
tired.
Right. Sounds
Like
like
don't try to control people if you've never been
right.
there. Stop. Like just
Right. You in your book
be
you talk a lot
authentic."
about manipulation and about narcissism, and it seems
Of
like
course.
that's really the theme here is that be authentic. If it
Of
really
course.
is about
Yes.
the mission for you, then
Yes.
talk about it being about the mission. But if it's really about the paycheck, maybe find more transactional relationships with your employees.
If it's really about the mission for you, you will attract people who are
Mhm.
attracted to the mission.
Yeah.
If it's really about the work that you do, other people will be inspired by how you feel about it and will follow you. But if you are attracting the type of person that is only there for one thing and then you are also only there for one thing, how can you complain about them only being there for one thing? How
Right.
can you pass? Do you know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
the funniest thing about people is just that they just say the things that they believe, right? They're just telling you exactly who they are all the time. I have seen many awesome missions, right? And those people attract their people, right? I attract my people. You know how many people follow me just realizing that suddenly that they have ADHD this whole time? Lots.
Right.
It's right. Like that's people find you based on what the energy that you're putting out. But it's not fair to act as if people who are making so much more, so much less than you, so much have it maybe harder than you, have to make $1 out of 15 cents. it just it's unfair, and it's just absolutely the pinnacle of narcissism to assume that they need to put more in than you put in. You know,
Right.
that I struggle with that energy. So I mean, in all forms, not just at work. I
Yeah.
struggle with that. I cannot be bothered.
Yeah.
So I think
I agree
if
with
you're
that.
right,
I think you can find meaning in like picking up boxes or making boxes.
of
I
course,
often talk about finding meaning in cleaning up dog poop as one of my first jobs.
of
But
course,
but what you're saying about if it needs to align with the actual like executives, and they need the receipts. They need to show you like
of course.
if I'm making millions of dollars and you're making minimum wage, then I can't really make that argument that it's all
Not
about
really.
right.
Not
Right.
really, right? Like, you can't come over to me and be like, "Hey, Di, I've decided to take this huge bonus. You're not gonna get any more money. Oh, by the way, I'm probably gonna fire you, but you should feel good about it. Don't talk bad about me on LinkedIn." You're just like, how many things do you think you should be able to control in one? You know what I mean? You're not. Come on, like,
Right.
uh,
Right. Yeah. And Leandra says that, that boxes, making boxes, whatever, is not that deep.
right? Like,
But
what do
maybe
we
it
need
could
people to
be.
do?
What if Bob was making boxes and you were there helping to make boxes? Boxes would be deep.
Of course. So Bob owns an HVAC company. I was working for him in the heat of Atlanta doing customer service for an HVAC company. This is not, and I've worked for Dana Farber. So like, I have run the entire, gauntlet of all the different kinds of jobs that exist. But learning from that man about what it was to be a human made me want to stay there and put more
Hmm.
effort in. I worked for him on Thanksgivings, which is, I talk about it in the book. I volunteered for working on Thanksgiving and covering the phones a bunch of times because he made me feel as if he would do it. He made me feel like he had done it, that he would never ask it of me if he hadn't done it himself, and that if I didn't want to do it, he was going to do it. No worries, Di. You attract people based on the energy you're putting out. So, I can't, I can't with folks that are just like, oh, it sounds to me, and it sounds to my ADHD brain, oh, this person won't let me exploit them and clap for me. It's like, okay, all right.
so so I can't believe we're almost out of time. This is
Are we really?
crazy.
Oh my
Yes,
God. How do we do this?
This happens when I have you on. Um but I wanna hit Philip's comment here. Considering the intersection of trauma and neurodiversity and identity, how do you want this book to address an individual's concerns or fears around society superimposing assumptions based on labels, for example, ADHD, autism, trauma survivor, once we start to live authentically in professional settings? And I think this is a very interesting question because last time you were on we talked a lot about diversity, which is, and we were
Mhm,
focused on the diversity that people often talk about, which is that
mhm.
surface level diversity.
Of
But you
course.
have all this deep level diversity of lived experiences, neurodiversity, hidden illnesses, things like that.
Of course.
So as we come out, they nobody has this. There isn't this universal experience. When I read your
No.
ADHD stuff, I'm like, oh my god, she's talking right to me. But sometimes you'll say something, I'm like, that's not me. It's not necessarily universal, and the way that somebody who's experienced trauma wants to be treated in the world, or addressed or not addressed, is going to be different too.
Yes. However, some of the bigger things are going to be the same. And I think that that's important, right? Some of the bigger things, like how, not necessarily how we want to be treated, A, B, C line items, but more like an awareness and an understanding of these things is so important to be able to see when something's happening that you might have been able to fix, right? That you might have just, I talk about it as just like an adjustment of a lens, right? So I come in and I will adjust people's lens in just the tiniest way and be like, for example, a lot of times I will have somebody come back to me and say, oh, this person's so negative. Di, do you have any feedback? This person's so negative. They're constantly like pointing out all of the flaws, and like, marketing will come in with these really great ideas. And then this person will come in and shoot them all down and want to know how we're going to get there and this, that, and the other. You find out that person's autistic and you're like, That's literally a thing.
Huh.
Like that,
Right.
do you know what I mean? It's not that hard. This is just, I mean, for me, it seems very natural and it seems very, because that's my experience, right? But if you, how I want people to, how I want this book to impact those things is a little bit of a different answer. So, how I want people to be impacted by this book, on the one hand, I don't want anything that I wrote to be used against people like me. That was really one of my gravest concerns when it came to writing this book. And in some ways, I kept some of that out, right? I didn't keep anything out that was specifically about me. I didn't keep any of my scariest stories out. But what I did keep out of it is sort of some of the secret stuff that we all share, because I didn't want people to be able to be hurt by it. I didn't want like a narcissist to pick up this book and be like, oh, these are the 15 things I can do to hurt these kinds of people. So I wanted to be really careful about how I thought about that. I think labels can be important because it can feel like, yes, maybe not everything I post hits you, David, who also has ADHD like me, but it's going to hit somebody else as long as I'm real about what I'm experiencing and I'm not pretending that all I need is a planner and a nice water bottle.
Mm.
Like, if I'm acknowledging it, more people will find it within themselves. More people will be able to examine it within themselves. If I am out there taking up so much space that people can't be afraid of it anymore, that's what I wanted. I wanted people to see me standing there naked effectively and feel like they can start coming out a little bit too. And that is very hard to do for folks who have been through the things that I have been through. So if I am out there with all of this armor, I want other people to be able to come stand behind me. Does that make sense? I want, if I am out about all of my things, other people can start finding the vocabulary to talk about themselves too. So I'm not saying that my experience is shared. I'm not saying it's universal. I'm saying we can look at these things and not feel shame. We can look at these things. We can talk about these things. Here, come sit next to me. It's going to be okay. We can talk about them together. We can get through these things together. We can
Right.
unbury some of these things that we have blamed on ourselves together. And who knows how far that will go. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying it's going to lead you all the way to whatever, but it'll definitely heal certain parts of your inner child that potentially you weren't looking at before. So it's okay if everybody hasn't gone through what I've gone through. Your worst thing is still your worst thing. Your worst pain is still your worst pain, and it feels the same. So if you've experienced trauma, you can live. You can get through this. I wanted people to see me and know that they could make it too. So I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm not speaking for others. I'm certainly not speaking for Black women. I understand that there is a difference when you can't hide who you are in the way that I can hide who I am, right? I can move in a way that makes me more whatever I want to be for that day, right? Like I can be invisible for that day in a way that other people can't be invisible for that day. So I am just speaking for me. I am just saying I'm going to be loud about this so that other people can be their version of this however they want to be, and I'm going to show that this can be done, that we can heal, that we can get better, and I'm hoping that I truly can eventually demonstrate that, because I'm still going too. I'm still healing too.
Yeah. I think you definitely do that in this book. You definitely open up conversation and get people thinking about these things. You describe your experience in the nice high school where and by nice I mean wealthy. I don't mean nice, but like and your experience with them redistricting or whatever just to
Yeah,
or rezoning just to
yeah,
just
just to avoid having me in their classrooms.
yeah. and
Absolutely.
and I have to honestly tell you it was a conversation that I had with my wife that we've never had this conversation. We've never thought about these things before. But my wife and I both reading your book about I think she said we need to bring in a foster child. And I said, in context with that story though,
Mhm.
I said, but at the same time, these people who have gone through trauma, and Di talks about some of the
Mhm.
victims of trauma being then taking on these behaviors, like the girl who told you
Mhm.
she would protect you
Mhm.
from the other kid, and if you were
Mhm.
sexually active with
Mhm.
her, right?
Mhm.
And so
Right.
so we're having real conversations about, well, our first duty is protecting our children. Yeah, but look at Di, and look how she says it's ingrained in us to sort of blame the victim, right? And to fear the
Yes.
victim. But at the same time, you do have these realities that you said nobody's like you, that you know that everybody's in
Right.
jail or dead or what, right? And so it's these conversations are happening because of you, and I think that's incredible. But yeah, please comment on
So
that.
let me, yes, I think that that's amazing. And what I would say to that is let me be the first. I'm not the only one like me, but let me be the first that shows how we are, how we can be, what's possible, how we can live beyond this, because I didn't have anyone advocating for me, right? You and your wife would be an incredible advocate for a child. Me, I was just fumbling through the world on my own, being specifically abused at home by a narcissist that liked for this to be worse for me every single day. But
Mhm.
imagine how much different it could be with people like you, with parents like you, with people who were advocating at the schools for someone like me. I mean, people ask me all the time, Di, do you think it's okay that gays adopt out of foster care? And I'm just like, you are so beyond what the problem here is. Like, you are so, of course, I would have loved to be adopted by a gay couple. Are you kidding me? My life would have changed.
Yeah.
Like, an affluent couple. Oh, no. Oh, no. You know, like, are you kidding me? You are so unaware of what the actual issues are inside foster care if you're worried about gay couples getting involved in adopting foster care, right? Like, that's not even in the range of what the real problems are.
Right.
But to speak to your, yes, we do need to protect our own kids. Yes, I agree with that. But I never went and abused other children that were living with me. That wasn't something that I did. I was in therapy, and maybe I'm just different. Maybe I'm just magical, whatever. But I don't think so. I think we constantly sort of blame kids, and I'm not saying you, we blame kids for the situation that they find themselves in because we can't live with anything else. If they weren't somehow responsible for what they had gone through, how could we continue saying that we're good people by never having considered things like foster care, by never having considered how other people have it, how other people have lived? So on the one hand, I completely understand that sort of knee jerk, like, oh God, you know, how bad can it? But on the other hand, if more kids are like me than even I know of, then look how many kids are just waiting to be loved. And that's all I've ever seen is kids that were just waiting to be loved. Now, was this girl that I talk about in my book specifically looking to harm? Yes. Was she specifically in an environment that was looking to harm? Yes. But that's not all of us. That's not everything. That's not everyone. And in fact, if more people like yourself and your wife were to get involved in the foster care system, think about the changes we could make. Think about how much how much good we could do. How much, you know, how much of our values and our love and our choices we could put into this system that has always sort of been the dark underbelly of the United States. Like,
Mhm.
why can't it be the opposite? Why can't we positively affect this? Why can't we look at this for the first time and say, I can fix this. Me and a coalition can help this. Like, of course, it's not getting better right now. Everybody's afraid of it. Like, everybody's avoiding it.
Right.
But if we were to be able to look at ourselves in that really naked way, we might be able to change some of this. And kids matter. These kids matter. You know what I mean? Like, we're responsible for them as adults.
Yeah.
We, the society around them, are responsible to make this better. And so far, we haven't. And we need to.
Wow. Really, really beautifully said.
Thank
I
you.
um I want people to connect with you. If you're watching live, if you're watching on the replay, that QR code will take you to Di's website, where you can order an advanced copy of this book. I highly recommend, I implore you, please read this book, because these conversations that come out of reading that book, the insights that come, the just the way she pulls this out of the shadows with all of its ugliness, but also some of the beauty, and seeing Die today as a product of that, and the fact that she's been able to pull herself out of that, and knowing that so many other people don't get to do that. I think it is our responsibility to open up ourselves up to these other lives that we know nothing about. Um, Di, could you leave us with one thing? So if I'm not looking to adopt, because as much as that was very convincing,
Of
I have
course.
5 kids, six, I don't know. I don't know about
No.
that. Um, and so I'm not looking to adopt. I don't feel empowered to like fix the foster system or eradicate all abuse. What
Yeah.
can I do? And specifically, the people that typically watch these things, the leaders in organizations, HR
Yeah.
managers, what can
Yes.
we do?
So I am not, here's what I have noticed. Read the book and see what it sparks in you. See what, see where you are like, oh my God, that's the one. I can change that. I can fix that right there. I see this going on with someone. I see this at work. I know somebody like this. Oh my gosh. It's That's what the book is for. The book is to spark that tiny little light that I can't know what you know. I can't know what's inside of your life, but here is what I do know. People read this book and they feel like I lived alongside them. They feel they will immediately know there's something that they can do to help. And I can't know what that is. Only you can know what that is. If you don't, it's not, I don't feel like people need to like necessarily adopt or, spend their billions on foster care. You should. I don't, but that's not my point. Read it and see what it sparks in you. If it sparks something that you can fix, or you can start an organization or a book club or any of those things, that's enough. That's enough. Everybody bring their one spark and turn it into a flame, turn it into a fire, turn it into a, just see what it sparks in you, and you will be so surprised where it leads you. That's the thing that I have grown the most with, is just, this is not just my story, right? This is a part of everybody's story. And the more people that read it, the less heavy it gets, the lighter it gets for me. And I'm starting to feel like that was the point. I'm starting to feel like the point of it is for everybody else to carry their piece and change their world too. So I'm hoping that that's what makes it all worth it.
Yeah, well, I want to personally thank you, for
Thank
writing
you.
this book. And I
Thank
know
you.
how difficult it was. And I feel horrible even thinking about the difficulty it is in reading these things when you had to live them again, and in order to share that with us. So thank you for that.
My
Um,
pleasure. Thank you so much for having me again.
and you're going to end up being our first third time guest, because I originally was thinking we'll talk about ADHD, all this stuff, and that's when you told me, oh, we should talk right around when my new book comes out. And then it was like, and so I thought we might be able to handle both, but I think there's still so much more we could talk about neurodiversity. So
Sure.
next time. Um,
I'm so excited.
and next time for us, actually, a special episode next week, we'll be talking with Luke Wright. Luke is a speaker, coach, a veteran Marine, a teacher, and he's also a Virginia State candidate for Virginia State Senate. Believe me, Di, I'm going to bring up the foster care issue with him, because this is somebody who is trying to get into this position of power and influence where hopefully he can do something. But tune in next week when we talk with Luke. He's an incredibly motivational individual, and we're going to talk about going beyond just talent, how we're able to succeed using our own drive and motivation and believing in ourselves. So that's next week. Di, thank you so much for all of you who tuned in today, and for all of you watching the replays. Thank you so much for joining us. And